Hello, it's Greg, Girls and Guys, and we're back. We hope you're having a happy day wherever you're listening to this audio content from. As always, we'd like to thank you for your continued support of Greg, Grizzled and Guidance, social media, and writing efforts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is episode 030 of the Greg, Grizzled and Guidance, definitely not a podcast show. A light and fluffy look at social media, Japan, Japanese food, expat life, and life in general. As always, your retweets of this and all the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful content that we actively tweet and retweet out on Craig Hoffman 11 on Twitter is appreciated. Thank you in advance for your help in getting the good word out about Greg, Grizzled, and Gaijin. Welcome back, another good show, I hope. Today we're talking about when life sort of kicks you. Usually I'm a really super positive person on social media, my blog and Twitter, and in real life too. This week kind of kicked me in the junk and backed the bus up to kick me in the junk again. And that's the way life goes sometimes. Really, it goes like that a lot for many people in the world, sadly. And it used to go like that always, basically every day when I was a young man in America. And I got used to that in many ways. But in Japan, the universe and karma and fate and all that stuff sort of let up on me, or gave up on me, or didn't find me worth kicking, I suppose. And so this week, when it did decide to kick me squarely in the stuff, and again and again, I took it a little hard. I'd love to tell you that I handled that like a pro, but I didn't. And, you know, that's the way it goes. You know, I'm human. To err is human, as they say. But, you know, I circled the wagons, as it were, and I put the pieces back together, and, you know, I'm moving forward as one does. It wasn't anything terrible or terminal, that's good to say. But at the end of the day, it bothered me, and I thought maybe people could benefit from that. The first thing is, you know, when the panic sets in, I work really hard. There's no doubt about that. And I'm a very OCD person about being perfect. It's in my personality, and I'm a highly competitive person, mostly with myself. I was talking to my beloved mother today. She gets on me often because I'm pretty blunt on Facebook, for example, and friends and family write her and call her because she doesn't have a computer. And they're like, oh, your son said this, son, and he was thrown under a bus. And I made some comment about 2 months ago. I said, someone asked rather, if you had money or your mother, who would you choose? And I said money. And people, oh, you're a terrible son, and you know, all of this. And maybe I am a terrible son, I don't know. But the context of that conversation was, I had given up my entire family and life in America for a job and economic opportunity in Japan. And 14 years later, I never went back, right? So the reality was, when the question is asked, if you had to choose between money and your mother, money won and continues to win daily in my life. And that's my reality. If I was a smarter man, more talented, or good fortune befell me, I would be living with my beloved mother or in a house right next door, but I'm not. And so, you know, again, back to the original premise of the show, what do you do when life kicks you? Well, I mean, you go down and, you know, you hit the mat, and this week I hit the mat face first, and it hurt a lot. And it was something that affects me personally, which I'm going to tell you I'm not a big fan of. And it affects my family and those I care about. And it wasn't anything I had done or didn't do. And that's terrible too. The worst part is, I have this thing in my life where I don't ask people for help. I never ask for advice, despite all of the, quote, advice stuff, end quote, that I do on my social media. I do not ask people for advice. I don't ask people to pass me the salt at the table. I'm a DIY person. Do it yourself. I believe in the whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps sort of thing. But the events of this past week shook me a bit because I needed, or if I did it, would need help from my wife. And she's fantastic. We celebrated our wedding ceremony anniversary this week, 9.5 years. And I've said often, I've never had a cross word with her in all of that time. Not one fight, not one angry word. I have bent and broken and acquiesced to her every word and action. And I'm proud of that. I grew up watching folks in relationships who chose not to do that, and it didn't end very well. I was bound and determined from the first moment of my marriage to have a happy one. And that doesn't make me some saint. It doesn't even mean my marriage is perfect. But it does mean it's very peaceful. And so the pressure was on. My wife took it much better than I did. And she was her usual positive self. And for the first time in a long time, I needed her to be that positive person. And I felt like I was taking energy from her to sustain me as I went about the rest of my week. And we were talking in the car as I was going to my company the other day. It rained and she took me, saved me from walking about 30 minutes in the rain. And I was telling her how appreciative I was that she was such a naturally optimistic person. But then again, I realized that in her life, her entire existence has been really, really positive. She's never had anything to worry about. But it shocked me at a moment when she probably should have been at least concerned on some level. She was still her positive, Genki, and high energy, sweet self. And I realized that for all that I have changed in my time in Japan, becoming a very low stress person, a person who focuses on what I can do in this reality to make my existence reach its full potential, what I can do to help others, how I can lead by example, how I can contribute to the foreign world in which I am lucky enough to live. But I realize that there are still remnants of the negative person that I was long ago. Rightfully so, in many respects. You can't be Little Miss Mary Sunshine when the world is falling around you 24/7. But I had realized that when, whatever you want to call it, hits the fan, and it does happen, that sadly, my basic core instinct was to fall back into a dark cloud of negativity and unhappiness and a feeling of being trapped. And I went back and I read the very first blog that I had in Japan, and I had read several hundred posts. I used to write every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And I realized that the problems that I thought I had 14, 13, 12, 11 years ago were so minuscule in comparison to what had happened this past week. It was a stark reminder that, in general, time and a wider perspective, and even one taking a deep breath to push out the negativity, one sees that today's problems are likely not nearly as big as they appear. And that seems easy to say, but I can tell you that this week, even after 14 years of very, 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 very happy times in Japan, when hit the fan, I fell apart. And if that's you or something you are going through in your life, I encourage you and I challenge you to stop what you're doing. Push out those negative feelings. assess your situation for the reality, and spend the majority of your energy finding realistic solutions, or at least some modicum of relief from your current situation. Don't wallow in self-pity, doubt, and most assuredly fear, because that will very, very, very much consume you and blind you to the path to happiness. That's it, and have a great, great day.